Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first episode of No Size Fits All. The whole idea of the name and premise is I've worked with all these different people. Everyone's story is so different, and basically kind of identifying and relating to some of the commonalities people have when they go to start, whether it's a weight loss program, muscle gain, pain management, whatever it is. So I want to really be a challenge to most of the influencers out there that you really have this generalized program. And really what I do is take a scientific, realistic approach to all my clients, family, and friends that I've worked with. I've been in this business for 22 years and worked with thousands of people, and every single person's journey is so different. And I want to talk about the things on this podcast that people don't talk about, and really the identifiers that make such the biggest difference. And everyone's all different. Some people need belief, some people need truth. And I can't be any more excited to have my first guest, who is not only my friend, has been successful with me and most importantly on his own. And his story to me has always been insanely influential. And he's really challenged and complimented me with what we've done to get better in such an evolutionary, progressive, and dynamic way in wellness. And, at this point, I really feel we're kind of writing the book, and I really appreciate everything he has done. So I want to introduce you, my friend and co-host, Joseph Nunley.
Well, not Joseph. You can call me that, I guess, but I feel like my mom's yelling at me when I get called Joseph. But yeah, thanks for having me, man. Really excited. It's been really cool to watch everything you've been doing and all your recent successes with your app and now a podcast. So I'm excited to be here as your first guest and then future co-host, and looking forward to telling some cool stories and hearing some cool stories.
Yeah, give me a little bit about your background, what you do, and your kind of wellness journey, just from a broad perspective.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, what I do like for a living is I'm an energy efficiency consultant. So that's not what we're going to talk about because it put a lot of people to sleep probably. But from a wellness perspective, I mean, growing up was always a really overweight kid, a fat kid, but while being as big as I was, which was, again, didn't realize it how bad it was until not too long ago in the past. I was looking at some photos like, wow, it was really bad. I was always active playing sports, where we grew up here in the Williams Valley, riding bikes in the mountains, playing in creeks, fishing, great childhood. So I was always active, but still just always really, really big. And then went and played football in college, had a pretty significant injury in the latter part of my college football career, which then led me to not be so active. And I think when we started working together as you were going through your career and starting to find your way in what you were doing, I mean, it was, every yo-yo diet, every crash diet that never stuck, never worked for quite a few years. And I was getting bigger and just getting bigger. And a lot of that like muscle I'd built up in college had been replaced with fat. And, I was up over 300 pounds. And then at some point something just stuck, and that's when we started working together. And then, yeah, it's stuck now. This is in my 11th year of really sticking to not one thing, which I think is the cool thing. Like I've tried a whole bunch of different stuff that I'm sure we'll get into. Yeah.
Yeah, let's go back to what life was like. So Joe was a part of my core group of friends that still to this day we get together, and I'm not going to tell you exactly what we do at Up High, but still trying to dissect and figure all that stuff out of really bonding and communicating off, I remember, I was just thinking about this the other day, Joe. I remember when we turned 18, like we got cigars and stuff, and, and we loved, when we got older, like we get Amish macaroni salad and the Bubba burgers. And we're going to talk a little bit about that, of where we started. Because like I said, any rehab, you kind of go back and re-strip yourself and be like, oh, I didn't realize, maybe I should have been done this. Like for mine, quick was like, I remember looking at Halloween and they said, oh, Ryan, you're skinny, you can eat all this candy. Well, looking back, I'm like, oh, well, that wasn't true. So talk to me a little bit about what those identities were that maybe was shown to you. It didn't mean any harm by it, but you realize maybe you had to fix some of these things.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I think the opposite of what you just said you experienced. Like no one ever looked at me and said, you're skinny, so you can eat all this. What I always got was, well, he's a growing boy. Right. And then also I was in like somewhere in the upper 90s, like 96th percentile of height and weight. And that was apparently like thought like, oh, well, he's in the 96th percentile of both. And it's like, well, that's okay. Well, like no, it's not. I should be in the weight one shouldn't be a 96 just because the height is, right? But I think the point is, and I'm sure it is, but I think back to, I don't want to frame it as all bad because, like I said, we were playing sports. I was still active, and I think there was good. I don't know if I'd say more good, but it maybe there was some good. But I think it was just, I there were no boundaries. I mean, it was no one even batted an eye when I was doubling the Kool-Aid recipe. I remember specifically one thing that I point back to a lot was we had a cabin on the Juniata River, and there were 3 camps next to each other, and right next to us was the Minnix, and then it was the Welkers, and it was our camp, right? And I would go camp to camp because I knew when they ate dinner, and we ate dinner first, and I would eat dinner, and then I'd go to the Minix camp, and they would say, "Joey, did you eat dinner yet?" And I would say, "Well, no." And they knew I did, but I would eat dinner there, and then I'd go down to the Welkers, and they'd say, "Joey, did you eat dinner yet?" And I'd be like, "No, I didn't. No, eat with us." And I would eat dinner there, and I would eat 3 dinners as a little kid, and it was just no one ever stopped it. No one ever thought to think, "Oh, well, this isn't good." And I just think,
Boundary, that's a great word.
yeah, sure. And I mean, but again, it's I'm not like trying to blame, like I would never like point the finger at my parents or my community because it was just that was the norm, and everybody did it. You just happened to, you were a naturally skinny kid. I was, a much larger kid. So I think it was hard to break that because you're conditioned to that. And we all know, well, not we all, but anyone who pays attention to it knows what things like sugar do to your brain. It literally rewires your brain. So you go into that world of wanting to continue to eat, and it's so hard to break.
When did you realize weight was an issue? Like, do you remember what that was?
I mean, I didn't really realize an issue there was one point. I mentioned that injury I had in college. So I tore my shoulder really badly, and I went in for a shoulder surgery. The MRI didn't show because I was like so big and the technology at the time wasn't as good. The MRI didn't show it as a significant tear. So to make a long story short, they thought it was going to be, hey, I'm going to go in for a scope. I'm going to get cleaned up. I'll be back in a couple weeks. Well, when they went in with the scope, they realized it was a complete labral tear from 3 to 11 o'clock, 1 o'clock. So it was a complete horseshoe tear, right? So basically, they didn't fix it. They pulled out. And I remember the Monday following that Friday surgery, which ended up not being a surgery, just pictures inside of my shoulder. I was sitting in the training room with our team doctor, Dr. Carey, and he looked at me and he said, you're not going to play football anymore, but that's fine. Like I wasn't going to the NFL, it was Division III, whatever. It wasn't a big deal. But he looked at me dead in the eyes. And I remember being so confused because he said to me, well, now let's focus on getting you back to a healthy living weight. Mind blown. I was 21 years old and I was like, well, what do you mean? Like you built me up to over 300 pounds to be this football player. I got into college. When I got to college, I was like 265, 270. They wanted me over 300. I never had the concept of this isn't a healthy living weight. Right. So that was when I was first told that it might be a problem, but it didn't really like sink in and be like, that day it was like, I'm going to change my life. Right. I sure tried to do little bits here and there, but it was college, I was drinking a lot of beer like everybody and but yeah, well, at that time, I don't even know that I could
more
process
awareness,
challenge thinking. It was more just like, what did you just say? Like what just happened? And I can like picture it like it was yesterday. But I think like the moment that I really realized it was becoming an issue was several years later. It was probably around 2013, 2012 that my then not yet wife, but girlfriend, or she might have been fiance at the time, depending on when it was, I don't remember, but we were at Hershey Park, and we got on the Great Bear, which the Great Bear is a ride where you get strapped in here, and the latch wouldn't click with me just being able to push it down myself. Like I could get it there and it would pop back up, and I had to get the guy to come over. And that was a moment, one, it was embarrassing. Yeah. 2, it was like alarming because I didn't realize it, because I was always a bigger guy. So even though I weighed that number, if I asked someone, they wouldn't have guessed that because I was always just broad too. So like that guy having to come over, some, high school kid, he was probably stoned working at Hershey Park, came to like push it in, and he pushed it down and it clicked on the last click. And I also remember being terrified the whole ride thinking this thing's going to come off. Sure. Now, so that was the moment really where I was like, holy shit, like this is a thing. Like I got to do something. Didn't.
That was enough is enough moment.
No, absolutely not. Because that was more like, to be honest with you, I don't know what that moment
Okay,
was.
okay.
Because there was no one moment.
Sometimes it's these small things that are building, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many small things that build up. Like I remember when my now wife and I got engaged. She went to Pitt. She loves Pittsburgh. We were actually there to watch your bodybuilding competition. You remember that was the weekend we got engaged. We were staying at this hotel, and and we wanted to go walk through like Pitt's campus, and the hotel was about a mile from the campus. And it's so weird to look back and think. My immediate reaction is like, okay, well, we'll get a cab at the time because like Uber was around, but I don't think it was. It's like we'll get a cab. She's like, what are you talking about? We'll just walk. And at that time, like me, it was like, but it's a mile. Like now it's like I walk my dog 3 to 4 miles a day. Like I didn't even think about it. It was like, okay. And I remember walking and I was in jeans and a t-shirt and it was only like 65 degrees out, but I was sweating and I had the ring in my pocket with a bunch of other stuff trying to hide it. And I was just miserable and pissed off because we were walking. So there's little moments like that have built up over time. But like that Great Bear moment was certainly the time I was like, what the hell is happening here?
And I appreciate that so much because every person I've ever had, and Joe's lost, over 100 pounds, every person in that category, if I had to generalize, which I don't like to do, but there is a commonality. There is something like that, like this realization comes. And it just breaks my heart for the people who don't react to that. So, I mean, I think that takes a lot of courage and vulnerability for Joe to admit that. What I wanted to ask here is, so we started this wellness journey. Did you think it was possible? Like when we first started this, like what was your realization to what this was? Like, could you put yourself in that brain? And I remember the first day. I remember being at your old house and being in that, little side room. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
No, we were in the basement at first before my side room was done.
Were we? Yeah, I remember that conversation. I remember the first day. Like I remember like that there was an anxiousness to you, like an aggressiveness, but all kind of combining as we dissect part of the same thing of breaking it down.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you start there and ask me, did I think change was possible? I would say the same answer that back when I first learned that I wasn't at a healthy living weight and I've spent years like losing weight, then putting 10 more than I lost back on in the yo-yo situation, I always thought change was possible.
Yeah.
But it lasted for anywhere from a few days to a few months until it was no longer possible. Yeah. Like it was always possible until it wasn't.
Did you remember any of those yo-yos that actually what your longest was? Like, do you remember? Or was it like 4 months, 6 months?
It probably something I don't remember specifically, but yeah, probably like somewhere between 3 and 4 months, maybe like at the longest. But most of them were a week, and then a weekend happened, and I never went back. Yeah. Like, I mean, but in reality, the time when we first started working together, which just so happened to be when it stuck, it was no different mentally. I was no different than any time I approached a crash diet. I think the big difference with us was, to your point of the way you approach it with no size fits all, you didn't come in there and say, this is the 150 things you have to do. Yeah. We started just with exercise, if you remember. It was 3 months of just exercising, because that was something I knew how to exercise. I mean, I was a college athlete. We lifted weights all the time. We worked out. And then you worked the nutrition in. Yeah. And then we took another step. And that, I think, is what also led to the way I still experiment with stuff today.
And that's so interesting because with me, I often do it reverse. It depends on what I feel subjectively someone needs to start at. And honestly, I'm very open. Sometimes I get it wrong at first. Sometimes you have to kind of go back. And I say all the time, I can name 200 things wrong with you on top of the 100 you named. What are the top 2 or 3 that are reasonable? And we just start chipping off the list. And that also, from a psychology perspective, dictates pace. One of the things I do remember about Joe and everyone, there's an anxiousness and excitedness, which is great, but we got to play the long game. And so you try to dictate speed. And that's why like the crash happens in the weekend, all that excitement the first day. I say it all the time. I don't want you overly excited, but I don't want you overly upset. I want you kind of floating in the middle. And I remember trying to dictate that pace, which I thought was kind of hard. And plus, like our dynamic, I think, was hard, that we were friends. And I remember being nervous that I didn't want to, because it's essentially two different relationships. It's, ideally, I hate using the word coaching because it's not how I look at it. But, I've always said my best client is I'm the board, they're the CEO. And I wanted to establish that, which we ultimately did pretty quick. But, I do love that you really made yourself vulnerable in that change to kind of see what this is, because it takes a lot of courage.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think there's any one thing to point to.
Yeah.
Like, and
It's
I
the journey, right?
well, and I don't, but even the fact that it stuck, I don't think it's any different from like, like, one of my guilty pleasures is my 600-pound life.
Yeah.
Intervention. Well, it's not, I don't think it's on anymore, but but if it was, I would still watch it. An intervention, because it's all the same. It's an addiction, right? Whether it's to food or drugs or alcohol or whatever it is, it's an addiction. And I think like any addiction, sure, there are the people that hit rock bottom. There are just as many, and they have a rock bottom moment. There are just as many people who are like, I'm just tired.
Yeah.
I'm just tired of doing this.
Yeah.
And when I look back, I used to think like, man, I wish I had a better, like, oh, this moment was when I decided to make it stick. There isn't one. I was just tired.
Yeah. Sometimes it's the best place for me to say, and I love what you're saying about addiction. I say to some degree, we're all addicts at something. And when I work with a client, I try to find what that is and understand its negotiation. So where Joe might have been addicted to whatever bad food he did, he took it right into running, which was great at the time. But I always had to stay ahead of him, be like, hey, if we keep this calculative, when you're 100, you're going to be going 70,000 miles. Like, so you chipped away and diversed what that addiction was. Even if it's a quote unquote good addiction, it's still diversified into this well-rounded. I always look at the word addiction and I find it and I try to chip all around the word by distributing different focuses to break it down.
Well, and I think breaking it down, it really is, it's the way that something can stick, because why do people, why, if you think about crash diets or any sort of specific thing that is just like, you will do this thing, like, why does that fail? Well, it fails because it's so restrictive. That's not real life. Same thing if you went into people and said, here's the 200 things I need you to fix. They may be able to do, maybe not 200, that's a little crazy example, but even if you said, here's 20 things you need to do every day and start doing it, they may be able to do it for a couple days or a week, but that's not sustainable right away, right up front. So that's where that approach of like a couple things at a time and focusing on what's the biggest for you is 100% the thing to do. And I don't always think it's like, for me, it really is, again, to back to the title of your podcast, like no size fits all. Exercise wasn't the biggest thing for me.
Yeah.
But you started there because
get the confidence.
It's something that I knew how to do,
Yeah.
comfortable.
Yeah.
Just
You live there.
Get into a thing.
Yeah.
And then we'll shift to this other thing. But you might not be able to do that with somebody else.
Yeah, some people it's quite the opposite. And it is really interesting, but there's a commonality in success and all this. It's like showing up, right? I say it all the time, consistency over intensity, and you figure it out along the way. And honestly, every now and again you do get stuck, which was one of the questions I had. I remember we went through a period where we worked together and you moved to Seattle, and I remember being a little worried about that, but in my opinion it's one of the greatest things, because that's when you grew into you created an identity, which I think is one of the most important parts. That you did it without me, and that's when I knew you had the sustainability.
Yeah, I mean, but I also grew physically in Seattle too. I put on some more weight.
Yeah.
Everyone
wants to do that.
I never went back. I've never even come close to being back to where I was. But my highest, other than my starting weight, my highest point after initially all going on the downtrend was when I first moved back from Seattle and being out there for 2 years, which is weird because it's one of the healthiest places in the country. I was super active, hiking all the time and stuff, but I was also exposed to a new world of, oh, I can walk out my front door and go to any kind of restaurant I want.
So where it could have been real good, it could have been real bad too.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, don't get me wrong. I continued to work out and exercise and all those things, but I needed that.
Yeah.
Like I needed that to be like, whoa, buddy, 1 year of this it's not set in yet. You need to keep doing stuff.
I love that you said that. I just had a guy lose, and I'm going to have him on the podcast, about lose 200 pounds. And I remember I'm so used to this now that I don't have emotional attachment. We went through this the beginning of last year, and I watched him go backwards a little. And before, it's kind of sitting hard to grin. Now that I have never not seen that, and that has always been the catalyst to have someone forever, because they feel what it's like to go back, never back to the original, and they say, I do not want to be here. And that's where I have them. Every single person I've had lose a lot of weight, they all went through that. I never had that not happen. And I really don't fight. I kind of sit back and watch now, like within, reason. Obviously, if there's different stress variables, but it's them finding themselves kind of going out in the world. And I really think that's where you created this um really niche for yourself. I say all the time, when people start to get real good with me, I have people with me for 15, 17 years. They tell me, and you're definitely there. Like, you're definitely the point where, like, hey, I'm trying this, and really teaching me. And one of the recent ones is like, I want to go into longevity and wellness. And I was like, wow, that is, I might be doing this bodybuilding, but there's some things I need to do. And it's one of the things that makes Joe so unique is, I say it all the time. I love how you said about the 20 things. If I tell a girl to do 5 things, they'll do 4.5. If I tell a guy to do one thing, they'll do an eighth of it, maybe. And then the other half, they say they'll figure out themselves. Guys, for the longest time, historically with me, I would not work with them. Like, and it was because I had the wrong approach. And we now know that there's a vulnerability, like the Vietnam veterans, like, oh, keep it all in. Like, we now know talking and admitting and dissecting is so much more powerful. And I do believe we were on the cutting edge of what that was, which again always worried me, because we're part of this group where we busting each other. And I remember, when I was thinking about this, I was like, there was a weird period for me. I'm like, I might bust on Joe's weight, or I don't really do that now. Of course, it's in good fun without harm meaning. But when you kind of hear someone's story, and people say it to me all the time, like, oh, do you ever look at someone and think, oh, they're fat and disgusting? No, because I heard so many people's stories and be like, what would I have been if I were in that situation? And there's so many different variables that affect weight.
I heard someone, and it just struck me when you said it. I heard someone say one time, and it sounds like the dumbest, most simplest thing, but when you break it down, it like makes total sense. Is, if I were you, I'd be you.
Yeah.
So like, to your point of like, so everyone's life experience. I mean, your life experience can be shaped by, when I walked out my front door this morning, did I decide to turn left or turn right? The things that can happen to you and all those Milla decisions that are in there can shape somebody. So yeah, absolutely. Like, there is definitely a world where you could have been 400 pounds and I could have been what an NPC bodybuilding champion. There's all these different worlds. I'm not talking multiverse here. I am a big multiverse person, but not in the comic book way, in the real scientific way. But my point is, I think it's, if I were you, would be you, is definitely a way to look at it. And you definitely don't criticize. That doesn't work. Right. But for you, just so you know, no hard feelings. We were kids and we were in our 20s. And I think even if you didn't do what you did, though, just naturally as you get older, not everybody, because some people are just assholes, but outside of that, you generally just don't like tell people they're fat anymore. I mean, what are you, a teenager? But I think, but yeah. And
I mean, hey, I apologized to my brother about it the one time. I was like, man, I probably give him a rough time.
as to him, though, he doesn't deserve it.
But it's definitely, you think differently when you see different perspectives and the reality to what that is. What I want to talk about now is, let's talk about year 1 to right now. I think one of the things people do that drives me crazy, but I've been there. I quit bodybuilding for one reason. If I went on stage, I said, I'm going to fix these 5 things and I'm perfect. Well, guess what I did? And I found 10 more wrong. I said, next show, I'm going to fix them 10. Well, guess what I did? Found 20. And it made me nutty. And on reflection, I'm like, I was looking at that wrong. Like, everyone thinks when you're there, then you got it all figured out. Like, you're at a healthy weight. And, like, explain what we're working on now. I feel it's so much more complex in a good way than it's ever been, but we now have this striving evolutionary force of confidence. And I love, you said this to me not that long ago. You're like, I have got to always be proactive. Wellness is always in motion. Like, it might take a break within calculation, but if you even remotely step off that gas pedal, you feel that pulling back.
Yeah. Well, man, there's a lot. You just asked a lot in one long rant, so I'm going to try to pick that apart. I'll start at the end because you just said something that reminds me of, something that when I say this a lot, and when I do say it, people kind of look sideways. One of the things I'm most grateful for is that when I get off track, I get fat immediately.
Yeah.
Immediately.
And
And
that's a
I'm
good thing.
and I'm actually happy about that because there's all the people who, like, well, to your point of what was said to you when you were a kid. Well, I eat cake every night and I'm skinny. And then they go to the doctor at 50 and they're diabetic.
I said 2 years ago.
Right. So I start eating cake like that. I get fat and eat. I'm like, whoa, need to change. Most people be like, well, I wish I could stay skinny. No, because internal health is the critical thing. So back to now the other things you're asking about, like going from year one to year and what we're working on now. One thing I would say is like always learn from what you're doing. Don't get monotonous in anything you're doing. So like I started out with just, like you said, the basic of like, just exercise. Let's do, and then we'll do this like nutrition stuff. It wasn't a specific meal plan. It wasn't anything like that. It was just eating better, eating whole foods. Right. And I lost the weight. And at the time, the big thing in exercise, that was when HIIT and higher intensity interval training was like the first thing. Like that was like the big thing then. So I was doing a lot of that HIIT stuff. Then, I moved out to Seattle, continued doing that. When I came back, I started becoming fascinated with more the mental side of things. So like, because, okay, I got the exercise thing. That's a part of my life. It was just a routine thing. Like I worked out whatever times a week or whatever, and I was doing these workouts. But it was more about I wanted to understand my mind more so I didn't have those bounce backs and I could really get into the mental side. And I really what I said was, what's the thing I hate doing more than anything? Yeah. And I hated running. I always hated running. Yeah. Even when we played football, I perfected a run where I would unstrap my shoulder pads and bounce more. So it made it look like I was running harder than I was. So coaches wouldn't understand I was dogging it. I hated running that much. So I said, you know what? I'm going to start running. Yeah. And I just like, see what I can do. I want to force myself to do something I hate doing. Yeah. And so that was when I had my like 3-year running spell where that's what I did. And I, ran a 5K. And the one thing to get into, to tie to your point of like bodybuilding drove you nuts, that's what happened to me with running. Yeah. I never ran the same distance race twice. I ran a 5K, then a 10K. Oh, no. Then from the 10K, I ran a half marathon. Then the half marathon, I ran the marathon. And then after the marathon, I ran a 50K, which is 31 miles in the ultra marathon. And then when I stopped running was when I was training for a 50 miler. And it got canceled because of COVID. And then I said, okay, well, I'll do another 50 miler when it opens back up. And then I was training for another 50 miler and had some serious like stomach issues. After a couple long runs, remember my stomach was getting all jacked up. And at that point I had a decision point. It was like,
you know what that was like?
I didn't know because I went into it and it was like, the weird thing is it's like, and I know I told you this, but it was back-to-back weekends where I had like just under 30-mile runs. And I got home from running that 30 miles and I felt great. It was some of the best runs I've ever had. I felt incredible. And anytime you get back from a long run like that, you sit down, you just try to check in with yourself for a minute. So I drank some Gatorade, checked in with myself. Man, feet feel good. Well, I'm tired, but good and not hurt. Nothing's bad. Drank some Gatorade. 45 minutes later, after checking in with myself, went upstairs to get a shower, projectile vomit in the bathroom. Both weekends, same thing. Great run, felt amazing. Projectile vomited into the bathroom and then was like for hours after that, shaky, stomach bad. And it wasn't, I was intaking calories, eating peanut butter and jelly when I was running, like the same thing I did for the ultra before. But my point is, it was like, hey, do I get into this and really dig in and figure out what this stomach is and get super analytical so I can go run a 50? And then I thought, well, then what? Then do I run a 50 miles? Then do I run the 100K at 61? And then am I running 100 miles? And I didn't want that. And really what opened my eyes was Cheryl, my wife, and I looked up how many people have run an ultra marathon? What percentage of the population? And the estimates are something like 0.0007%. And I was like, well, I should be happy with that. Yeah, and it was a really big lesson for me to be happy with that. What I went into was just, more exercising, But last year was really last year was 25. 24 was the defining year for me in changing, because I got into the longevity thing. And that's what's going to shift into what we're working on now, because I really went through this process with my mom passing away, and she was only 65. And even worse than, I think, her passing young, because 65 is young, was the last 10 years of her life were just not good because she wasn't healthy, right? And it killed me. Like, it was also at the same time as I was getting healthier, and it just killed me more. It's always sad when you lose a parent, right? Or any loved one. It's terribly sad. The sadder thing than losing her was the thoughts towards the end of all the things that she physically was not able to do. And I'm not saying like go climb a mountain. Right. I'm saying she couldn't go to a lot of events with her grandkids because she couldn't get from the garage or the parking lot to the car without a scooter, and they didn't have a scooter yet. Like things like that are just like the things to fulfill life. So my focus became on longevity, to not only just live as long as possible, but to have the longest health span as possible. So in doing that, I really started focusing on, that mobility and the things that are essentially what I did was made a list of things that I want to do, be able to do at 100 years old. Yeah. Like not live till I'm 100, a list of things I still want to be able to do, right? I want to be able to walk the golf course at 100. I want to be able to hike 3 miles uphill at 100, right? So those are two things. I'm not going to give you the whole list because some of them aren't appropriate to talk about in the podcast, the things I want to still be able to do at 100. But I would say that, and then work backwards from there. So okay, to hike 3 miles, you need a VO2 max of X. You need to be right. So just work backwards. And then I got like over tracky. I tracked way too much, and it became too much of a session. So then just kind of settled into this. Hey, like making sure your mobility stays good, making sure that you build muscle not to look good, but you build muscle because you naturally lose it as you get older, and muscle mass is so important for, you see the old people walking hunched over, right? It's like, that's because they don't build any muscle mass. So make sure that you can, so many people get injured when they're older, carrying their groceries into the house or putting their luggage in an overhead bin. And so you can do those things without getting injured, because when you get over a certain age, injury leads to death at a really high percentage because you become immobile. And it was all about not being immobile. So that was really what we shifted into now.
Yeah. And I got to tell you, like, you've helped me so much change that thinking and really challenge that thinking even to what I was doing. I have 3 80-year-olds I work with that I've taken some of the stuff I've learned that I wanted for you. Then I realized it helped me along the way. And then I started implementing it into my 80-year-olds. And believe it or not, like, you hear this whole idea of investing in health. When I'm teaching them how to go up and down on the stairs and, some of the 1 foot thing we're working on and transition of posture, like, to me, that's like putting money in the bank, like kind of what you said, like it's investing that in 80, like my 80-year-olds and they're great. But I said to them, imagine if we would have done this 20 years ago. And that's what, that's what you and I are doing. And we both lost our moms young, and we could say they did this right, did this wrong, both incredible ladies. But I do believe that's the neat part about life is we get to make that change and influence other. And I hope, I got a new nephew born. I hope he does better than what I did and what we did, that we were, maybe taught this. Because everyone says, I wish I would have known this earlier. Like, I don't think that way. Like, I love that I'm learning along the way. I mean, you think that way, but.
Well, and the science will tell you that there is no too late.
Yeah.
Like there isn't, there just isn't. Yeah, sure. Is starting at a certain age better? Of course it is. Like, let's not be crazy, but there isn't a too late. So like I tell my dad this all the time, he's turning 70 in a couple of weeks, and he's doing incredible. But God, like doing doing light strength exercising. I bought him some bands and stuff just to put it. Not talking about lifting. I'm not talking about pushing plates. I'm saying just put your muscles under some sort of resistance. He plays golf 4 or 5 times a week, walks, kayaks. Right. And this sure. Yeah, right. But again, the point is, it's not immediate reaction was, well, what's it matter now? He was about 65 when we started. But the one thing to his credit is, like, I could say, well, X study showed that even people after 60, their DNA changed, their cellular structure changed. Cellular structure changed when they started resistance training. And you can do it now. Yeah, you're not going to get jacked. That's not the point. The point is keep some stability, but it is amazing you're working with 80-year-olds, right? I want to touch on that for a second, because when I normally tell people about my longevity goal, I used to put a number on how long I want to live. And I don't do that anymore, because I think it's more just I want to be able to do these things when I'm a certain age. A lot of people say to me, oh, I don't want to live that long.
Oh, yeah.
And then it's like, well, why not? Well, dude, those years, do you see 80? Do you see 90? But the problem, right, that's where it is when you don't do the things we're doing now. Yes, most people at 80 are living a really rough life if they make it to 80 right now. But there's also 100-year-olds that are running marathons. There's also 80-year-olds that you're working with. There's also 80-year-olds. I mean, when I'm hiking every weekend on the trail, I pass really old people all the time. They're taking care of themselves. You can do it, and 80 doesn't have to look like that. 100 doesn't have to look like that, and over 100 doesn't have to be in a pine box. It's just where we are, right?
And like you said, as you change your thinking, it's not like, oh, these 80-year-olds are trying to climb the mountain and do 30 miles. It's like they can get down to the floor and work with their great grandkids, which is like, that's what this is all about. But people don't look at it from that perspective where I feel we do. And believe it or not, that's what we're doing, where we were taught to like do all this heavy lifting. It's actually what he and I mostly do now, individually. I mean, we do a little bit of lifting? Sure. But in a very controlled, calculated manner. And, I love what you said about really kind of what your dad did and made that change. One word came up in my mind when you're saying that: living. Like that like that's still living. We have a projection of and I was taught that in school. I was taught that pretty much when you turn 65 that you prepare to die. And I remember that didn't make a lot of sense to me. And seeing that change has been so inspiring to know we still have a bunch of years even after retirement of living. I think the saddest thing in the world is when people work, retire, die. I think that's the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, and I mean, I will say another really sad thing is when you make the statement that you want to live to, like, I don't know, 120, 150, and then you run your 401k calculation of what it's going to take to live live that long. It changes the calculus. Not that I don't want to. I would rather be alive and healthy and living in a one-room shack, to be honest with you. But I think it's that experience of watching what my mom went through, and then also just watching what a lot of people go through makes me realize I don't want that. Yeah. Like, that's the opposite of the thing I want.
If we were to challenge your thinking now, again, looking at this powerful word of addiction, where you went and did this race where in 5K and 10Ks, and like, would you still say that's still a form of addiction, maybe subjectively not as bad as what you're doing before, but then you found this control? Would you even say now your addiction, possibly challenging, is too overcalculative, to that you're too focused in the future, that you're not living in the present, sit back and be like, hey, I'm doing pretty good? Like, do you find this calculated? Like, we have a war to win, but do you sit back and look at some of these battles you've won?
Not enough. Yeah. So, well, let me start with this though. I am still addicted to food.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that's
to a degree.
No, to a severe degree, just as severe as I was before. You do keep mentioning, and because I think a lot of people do this, is saying like, then now you got that one done. It's not done.
It's always managed, right?
It is it is.
That burns, but just
it is in my mind every minute of every day.
Yeah, it's a battle.
It is. But what changed was recognizing that and being comfortable with it and understanding when you can and can't. Yeah. Right. So like, even when I was through this 11 years, like, the hardest thing to break, which I still struggle with, but it's like incremental better, is weekends. So my thing, dude, I put in, and some of these stories, like, but I would put in epic weekends. I'm talking like 15,000 calorie a day, whole sheet cake and burgers at weekends, thinking like, oh, I ate clean all week. But then I would gain 7-8 pounds literally over a weekend. And then the next week just became working that off. Yeah. Right. So, getting to a place where I'm at now, where it's like, okay, on a weekend, if I want to have a burger and fries at dinner, I'll have a burger and fries, maybe even a little dessert. But then that doesn't turn into then going back home and eating a bucket of cookies after that and just throwing it all away, right? That was the big, but that for me is a victory. So I just want to make sure I point out, like,
No.
I am still 100% addicted to food.
No, I appreciate you saying that, and I say it all the time, like, addictions are fires that never go out. We might dim them as low as they can go, but they're always there, and, I mean, we talked about your binging. It's like, our progression is how do we lessen the severity? It doesn't go away.
Yeah.
Like, 8 pounds becomes 6 pounds. Like, that is when you understood that whole dynamic is what I think your success has been, and I don't think you can diminish the distractions you have around that. Like, you go for hikes that sometimes take away from your ability. I just feel like if we had an ultimate goal, and it's kind of ironic, I say it always comes full circle. Our ultimate goal is to sit by the fireplace in stillness and be dead okay with it. That we not need to, because like you're always in motion, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think back to your, well, I am and I'm not. I am either in motion or I am fully stopped.
That it's this roller coaster.
Yeah, and it's not an uncommon statement in our house for me or Cheryl to say, I want to go to bed because if I don't, I'm gonna want to keep eating.
Yeah.
And I'll literally just go to bed, or she, or we always go together. That's one of the things that a strong marriage for us. One thing that keeps us going is even if one of us isn't tired, which I'm always tired. She calls me Pappy, which I am. If I'm not in bed by 9 o'clock, I start panicking. Like I am in bed by 9 o'clock. But so it's never. I'm never arguing to go to bed. Right? But if we always go together, right? So like she, even she will say, at 8:30 sometimes or before 9 o'clock, we know it's TV turns off, we go to bed, but it is, I want to go to bed because I'm going to keep thinking about eating. So having like together we have that because we both obviously look very differently. She's very much more in shape than I even am now or ever was. She's always had a focus of it, but also struggle with the eating thing.
Just kind of apples and oranges, but same kind of commonalities.
And that's something that we'll talk about later when it's like misunderstandings and in the journey and things. But I think back to your point of over analytic in the past few years, again, to this ebb and flow, and it's really a lifelong process. Have stopped doing it. I really have stopped doing it, and I'm because that first year I got into longevity, I like overanalyzed, like calculating VO2 max and looking at making sure I got this and that. But it was good to do for 1 year because it taught me a few things. The first thing it taught me was you're going to drive yourself crazy with doing this, so stop doing it. That was one. The other thing it taught me was, oh, when I do the things I normally do, I am just hitting the metrics I want to hit. So instead of just over calculating it and look at how many minutes I'm in zone 2 and how many days I'm doing resistance training and how many days I'm doing high intensity zone 3 or 4 cardio, just keep doing the normal thing I do. And that always is when I would hit my minute threshold. So just do that and stop calculating it.
Always let you do your thing with that. I say all the time, you don't find boundaries till you go over something and under something. That's where you find balance. And I've always thought you've been so good with that. Like I think you figure that stuff out so much. And I got to tell you, like like there's one thing, there's sometimes these things are subjective. I remember an anxiousness about you that was just, kind of like you're calmer. Not to say there's not still work to do, but there's a peace in knowing, have a better, more kind of intimate relationship with yourself of kind of these vulnerabilities and controls and distractions. And I think it's made you better on so many different levels as even a worker and a husband and just everything. Like you really understand balance by knowing what too much is and what too little is. I think you figure that stuff out so quick. One of the things I wanted to ask you was, and I don't think you and I ever actually talked about this, was the friend and kind of working relationship dynamic. Explain to me what your viewpoint was there, where it is now, and do we feel, and I got to tell you, this is authentic as could be because we never talked about this. Like, I think there's still an understanding of our relationship to kind of keep it separate to friendship, to what this stuff is. And what has been your viewpoint on that?
I never thought it was a big deal. I really didn't. Because I know it stressed you out more. Yeah, but I think I always, and maybe I can say I always knew now because I just never really put a lot on it. And maybe I did think this back when we first started, but I never did. I never had the mindset of, well, you're just going to fix me. Because you need to fix you. Like I always knew it needed to be me that did most of it anyway. I think, and I always knew that you knew what you were doing. And I think some of it helped me being in like the profession I was in. And around the time that we started working together was also around the time that like a lot of our friends, a lot of my friends, your friends or our joint friends were buying like their first houses. So they would come to me for like energy advice, and I would want them to listen to me because that was my field of expertise. So how would I not listen to you with your field of expertise? So I never really viewed it as any issue, but I think the biggest thing I think isn't necessarily tied directly to like us being such good friends. I mean, you were in my wedding. Having one of the biggest deals is having people understanding what you're trying to do that can complement what you want to do in different areas. So what I mean by that is you understood what I was trying to do. You had a certain skill set that could complement and assist me in doing that. Yeah. Right. That is really critical. And then I think that is the same for your internal relationships. Like I was thinking about this the other day. Cheryl and I were on a hike just last weekend, actually, and we were talking about this because she knew I was coming to do this with you. And I was talking about some of the stuff that, just I knew you wanted me to talk about my story, my journey. And, we were talking about this and she always said for her, it helped that she met somebody that had what we call the disease. So that like addiction to eating and wanting to eat and keep eating and eating bad. So we had that, right? So we both had that. And that was a big help of being with somebody and being a marriage life partner of someone who understood that. Now, I brought to it that I think that helped with the food. So we had that relationship that was supportive in that. We both understood each other and what we were trying to do. I think on the flip side of that, the fact that she was always an exerciser, no matter what. I was only an exerciser when I was trying to lose some weight or trying to do whatever. Since she was like, I would say early teens, she didn't feel right if she didn't do something. Not every single day, but multiple days a week. If she didn't, it used to be go for a run. Now it's like the different classes she does. We box together. Like the things we do now, she does a lot more strength training. But if she didn't do those things, she would feel weird. Whereas my default is lazy. My default is sit. My default is not do it. So like when she says to me on like a Tuesday, hey, after work, do you want to take the dogs or take the dog and go out to the woods instead of just walking around here?
Your auto reply is no.
And this is the weirdest thing. I love being in the woods, but it's a school night and I eat dinner at this time. And my auto reply is no. And then that used to cause like a little tension. But now I realize that like within 30 seconds, I'm like, well, of course I do. What else do I got going? Of course I'll go do that. We should go do that. It'll be fun. But I don't take my first answer. But my point in that is if she wasn't default active and was default lazy, all it takes is for one to say no, right? Like I say no, but she convinces yes. Okay, we do it. If we both were that way and we're trying to do things together, you're never going to get off the couch because there's always going to be one of you that's going to say no. And then the other one is okay with that no. There needs to be one that's not. So I think having back to like you as a friend, having that relationship, I think it improved it. It also was a lot cheaper for me to pay for a personal trainer. That was another benefit too. I probably would be a lot poorer if I went out and had to get someone else to do it. But I think you as a friend, knowing what I was going through and having that skill set, her as a partner, in marriage and life and everything, having the same food, but then the opposite work exercise, just listen, none of it's easy, but it helps. Those are certain things. And I think that's like a big reason for why I was able to be successful. And still today.
Yeah.
It's right now.
I got to tell you, that's actually something I just told my girlfriend Laura the other day. I was like, man, I hate to admit this. And stupid, just like total man vulnerability, but like having her do this stuff with me and even my client, like it makes it easier for me. And I never did, that was never a thing to me, but now that, cause it's a community, right? With Cheryl, you had to work in the listening and it sounded like you did. Now, what I want to lead into now, Joe, is if we got to play Back to the Future and we got to go back and talk to Joe of day one, or this listener who's kind of on the fence of making the first step, like no one identifies, like you can listen to me until I'm talking in blue, but people who lost a lot of weight, they get more street credibility than I do. So what would be the thing you would say to the Joe of back when our first day was, or the person listening when they're on the fence? What would your first advice be on changing and making that first step, which is the hardest part?
I think the best thing to say to someone, the best thing someone can do that's stuck is don't overthink it. Start where you are. Yeah. Like that's what you and I did and it worked. Like I already knew how to exercise. So just start wherever you are, build from there, and don't overcomplicate it. And I can go back to, and you and I had talked about this, like my brother is in a, I think a similar situation where, you know, he does really good sticking to a certain thing and he'll lose a bunch of weight. And then, he travels a lot for his job, will go off. But you're looking at, he wants to try to fix all these things and he wasn't sleeping enough. So my first thing was like, just sleep better. Just sleep better. Now, I wouldn't tell everyone. I mean, sleep is super critical, but it's not necessarily everyone's number one. But I knew that if he didn't sleep better, it didn't matter how much he worked out because his body was going to be in constant inflammation, constant stress, could have made it worse. Didn't matter how well he ate. He could eat really well and he'd become discouraged. So I was like, hey, man, just sleep better. Just get some more sleep. So he sleeps better. Yeah. Starts sleeping better. And it's like, okay, well now, like, eat, focus on your nutrition, eat, whatever, starts eating better. And it's like, okay, now he's like ready to do some resistance. So when he's over my house over Thanksgiving, he comes out to the garage with me. I'd show him a little resistance band stuff to, like, he has a bad back, like stretch your back. Like, so it's really just start wherever you are, do one thing, just do something. And then once you feel good about that, just like add one more and build. And then you blink and you wake up 11 years later and I'm reading PubMed studies on the cellular adaptations of resistance training. And I'm like diving, it's
going into my world, right?
You add the stuff. And I think that's just start where you are is the most important thing, I think.
What I love that you said about that is so many people come in with like kind of what you said, overthinking, and I need to drink a gallon and a half of water. I need this many calories. They are so clouded by all the information out there. And that's why people say, like, are you afraid, like, this like AI will affect? And I was like, no, not at all. Because people still to this day don't study exactly where if someone tells me they drink 10 Mountain Dews a day, you know what I do? Drink 9. If they drink 1 bottle of water a day, I tell them let's go to 2. Like people do not, they automatically want this calculation thrown at them where they don't realize how powerful that one little change is. Like when you're building the blocks to sustainability. So it is changing and challenging the mentality of what is out there, because I don't read or see any of this out there, kind of the whole premise of what this podcast is. And so him saying that, and I always kind of have the analogy of building a snowball. The biggest lie in my business is the last 10 is the hardest to lose. It's getting the ball rolling. Once the ball rolling, like he said, 10 years go by. That's why I'm very honest with people at this. I need 1 year to learn you, 2 years to implement my educated guesses. He's adding resistance training and maybe don't work. Part of that is doesn't always work. Like, that's still learning. I tried fish. You ate fish. Now you hate it. Like there's all
back on, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
It's not as fishy to me anymore. Yeah. It's one of the things that killed me. I loved fish. And then all of a sudden we moved back from Seattle and I couldn't even be near fish. Everything smelled so bad to me. But I'm starting to get back now. I'm eating a lot. I'm eating some salmon at least once a week and I'm starting to get back to it and it's not as fishy. So whatever happened, whatever was going on in my nose or my taste buds or whatever, it seems to be rectifying. So, but anyway.
So it's never stagnant. It always changes, right? And it's always like there's something that didn't work with him before, now is again. And I got to tell you, there's never a cruise control in this. There is always I make a deal with people and they walk through the door, and it is this simple. Every time you walk through the door, it's got a little something better. He and I still do it. Like every time I see him, we get a little better at something. And that is, I always say all the time, health is a screenshot of that exact moment. My weight was this at this time. Wellness, it just doesn't stop. It's not extreme, but it's moving. It's always kind of dissected and involved. And sometimes we take different turns. But this guy here, he does so many things now. He just told me when he was in Florida, he does yoga and Pilates. And that's when you're getting good at stuff. You start really accepting being okay with not being great at something. I can't imagine you're a yoga master. and neither am I.
But yeah, I mean, when we were down in Florida for 2 months to be near my family, that's all down there now, and we found this uh studio. It's called Savage Yoga Studio. They had hot yoga, hot Pilates, they had kettlebell classes, strength classes, and it was all this cool stuff. And the reason I even found it was because I cold plunge every morning as part of my kind of morning routine, and I didn't have it down there, so I was looking for a cold plunge, and when I searched for one, they had one, and it found it, and we went and was like, oh my god, look at all this other stuff. Me and Cheryl absolutely loved it, but you want to know how bad you are at something? I recommend anyone to try Pilates and bar. Yeah. Bar class, like with the ballet shit on the bar. I felt like a straight up, I like to think I'm an athlete. I felt like a straight up ogre. Oh, well, it is. Yeah. I mean, it's funny. Like I could laugh at myself. It was fine. And everybody at this place was so incredible and non-judgmental, so it was great. But yeah, so to your point of, never stop trying stuff, I think is the point, because none of this should be like cruise control is not fun. No. Like who wants to be on cruise control? Like there's nothing fun about that. So live in your life as part of like trying new things and failing at stuff and being better at stuff. And I'll tell you right now, what doing Pilates and bar taught me, I didn't come home and try to find a Pilates gym. What it taught me was, wow, I am really weak in X area. Like I am a really strong person, but man, I am super weak. I can't even, and I'm sit up on one hip and have my legs and my shoulders off the ground for more than like 4 seconds without falling over. I was like a barrel. Yeah. And that point is, okay, well, what do I need to strengthen? I need to strengthen my lower psoas. I need to strengthen all these things I need to realize that I need to do. And then it just made me go work on them. And then what did I come home and tell you my goal? My goal this year is to be able to do a full squat, but on heels without lifting my heels off the ground. Yeah.
And the neat part is one of Joe's identities is a golfer, and he's realizing, Conor McGregor had a saying once, never be 100% good at one thing, be 80% good at everything. And he's realizing all these filling the holes of, even though he's not a master, will then transfer to make that 1% better of you being a golfer, where we start working his hips like, hey, my swing's gotten better. Like then that to me improves quality of life. But it does show you the progression of the entire thing. So it is a very well-rounded and very redirective theory. I mean, I just discovered something about myself the other day. I could like something I did with my toes, and I never saw it. But it's you might get a little frustrated. Or at least I do at first. And then like once you're over that emotional response, you're like you're like, okay, I suck at this. Let's get better at it. And there's a surrender to that. And then once you feel yourself get a little better, it's the greatest feeling in the world. And I tell people like, don't be afraid to suck at something new. Like it's okay. And I really think you've kind of been the master at that. Like you've been so vulnerable to just like longevity and wellness. And I want to like squat, like that seems like such a simple thing to where we started. And let's try to bench press 6,000 pounds, so it's really an attestment to really how much we're diverse and changing. And even me, like I'm teaching stuff different now than I did 10 years ago. So, we all kind of are learning together through this.
Yeah. But I mean, if you're not doing that, you're not being genuine at all. No. Because what doesn't change? Like if you're raising your kids, for example, today, nutritionally, the exact same way our parents raised us, you aren't being genuine, you aren't being intelligent, you aren't doing, like, everything changes. You can't knock what our parents did because that was the knowledge they had. But if you're still doing that today, it's just laziness and it's ignorance or laziness or whatever it is. The information's there. And I think it's the same thing here. Like if you if you keep going and doing the same thing and it's causing something to hurt, well, and you don't go do something different, well, that's on you at that point. Like what do you, yeah, right. It was right. Doing the same thing. Or I think of like, I think your second favorite president, George W. Bush, when he said, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, well, you ain't gonna fool me twice.
Yeah.
I think about, it's like, you really, I don't know how that ties in. I just wanted to get it in there. But I think the point is, yeah, you always should be evolving in what you're doing and have like, So back to the advice of starting where you are, I think that's advice piece one. I think 1A is just don't stop having fun with it.
Yeah.
Like, how often have we talked about playing?
For sure. Man, I just had that, I had a girl in who needed really specific instruction, had all these surgeries, and, you come in and look at me as another appointment, and there's this, it's kinda like you're going to the doctors and stuff, and I always make agreement, 15 minutes of let me do my thing, technicality, 45 minutes of fun. I would argue that that 45 minutes of fun trumps that 15 minutes because at the end of the day, it is an adult recess. Nothing makes me more happy when someone's here and they go, "Oh my God, that hour's up already." You lose track of time. And I try to get that with people every time. I don't want this to be another thing to do because we have that all day. You got to have like that's part of the thing with you. You set the pace of the morning by your cold plunge and working out and then really try to battle the day and of what this is. And my one client, Gary, he's so amazing. Like he's such a disciplined guy, and he always says what you did. He goes, every day I wake up, he kind of feels the angel and demon on us. He's like, he wants to go back to bed. And every day, and he gets up, and like once he's doing, he's like, why was I even like? It doesn't stop, and I tell people that it gets maybe a tad easier to a degree, but you feel it in different vulnerable moments, whether it's stress or your schedule gets thrown off. You come back from traveling, it's challenged.
It really helped me. Like, even though I've been cold plunging most every morning, I mean, when I'm not home or whatever I can't, but most every morning I do, for almost 2 years now. I still stand in front of that thing and stare at it, sometimes for a minute, sometimes for a solid 5 minutes of just like, what am I doing? Why am I getting in here? This is going to suck. It's so cold. It doesn't matter. And what helped me with that is like, we look at these, you were talking about influencers earlier, right? And some of the bad. I think there's also some good with some, right? And a person that I really admire, that I take a lot of the mental side from. I think he does some crazy like over the top things and has like almost died a few times getting like rhabdomyosis and stuff, but it's like David Goggins, right? So he is billed as the mentally toughest human in the world, right? Like mentally ridiculously tough. Has a similar story where he was over 300 pounds or whatever, did all this stuff. But I heard him say one time, and it took me back. He said, I'm not going to say it like he says it because we're not going to say the F word in this podcast, but he says, when I go to run some mornings, I look at my shoes and I stare at them MFers for 30 minutes sometimes. And when I heard him say that, it was like, oh, wow, like you can still be that and do that. And then you realize you start to pay attention to that of other people. And it's a super common thing. Yeah. But having that mental of still do it, and afterwards you never regret it. Like I never regret, like when I get out of there, when I get out of that thing, it sucks when I get out of it and you get the dopamine rush and my body feels better and I'm not in as much pain. I still like, I'm so glad I did that. I'm never mad that I did it.
Yeah, we ignorantly think that like being that we felt that goes into the beginning of next time. Or no, it's just a cycle all the time. But no, I mean, I'm sure we could continue to talk about a million things, but I know Joe is going on a hike, and I don't want to hold that from him. And one of the things I want to say is thank you for doing this. I think it's the journey with you's been amazing. You've made me better. You've influenced other people. I've always said what I did has been very contagious, and it's real. Genuinely speaking, that's what I want this to be. I'm so confident in the work that I do and with clients and just putting the truth out there and the vulnerabilities and the understandings to hope influence little change that can really change your life, because that's really what I'm looking for is really battle all the nonsense out there right now and put people on the right track and living a better life that's pain-free, energy, enjoying your family, all that stuff. But thank you for coming on, and Joe's gonna be my co-host. I'm gonna have him on kind of again challenging and guiding my thinking with different people and clients sharing their journey. And just want to thank you once again.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. It was great.
Later.